Two Against the Storm by Jansen Davies. Chapter 1. The Edge of Silence. The stars didn't speak. They shimmered, pulsed, and burned across the black canvas of space, but they offered no comfort, no conversation. For Lieutenants Mary Quince and Ben Sims, silence had become a third crewmate aboard the Hornblower, their patrol craft stationed at the furthest edge of the galactic frontier. 2 years into a 3-year rotation, their assignment was simple. Monitor the Millie. Millie was a wormhole older than recorded history, a gravitational scar in the fabric of space that had lain dormant for over 1,000 years. It didn't move, it didn't pulse, it didn't even hum. It just existed, an obsidian eye staring into the void, and it was their job to stare back. Mary sat at her console, fingers gliding over the interface with practiced ease. Her auburn hair was tied back in a regulation knot, though a few strands had rebelled and curled around her cheek. She brushed them away absently, eyes fixed on the sensor readouts. Nothing, as always. Ben leaned against the bulkhead behind her, arms crossed, watching her work. He didn't say anything. He rarely did during the checks. It was their ritual, quiet, efficient, and wordless. But Mary felt his presence like gravity. She always did. She loved him, secretly, fiercely, and she hated herself for it. Love had no place in the fleet, especially not here at the edge of nowhere, where duty was the only tether to sanity. She had buried the feeling deep beneath layers of protocol and professionalism, but it surfaced in moments like this, the way she noticed the way he stood, the way his voice lingered in her thoughts long after he spoke. Kyle, their AI support system, broke the silence. Sensor sweeps complete. No anomalies, no movement, no change. Would you like me to repeat that in haiku form? Ben smirked. Only if you can make it rhyme. I am not programmed for poetic deception, Kyle replied dryly. Mary chuckled. It was the first sound of life in hours. Kyle was their mediator, their referee, their reluctant therapist. He settled disputes, mostly over chess, which Ben dominated with ruthless precision. Kyle also monitored their vitals, their sleep cycles, and their psychological profiles. He knew Mary was lonely. He knew Ben was restless. But he never said so. Not directly. Check complete, Mary said, logging the data. Same as yesterday, same as the day before. Ben stepped forward, his voice low. You ever wonder if we're the only ones left? Mary turned to him. You mean in the galaxy? Number, I mean, if everyone else just moved on. Forgot about us. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Outside the viewport, Millie loomed, a perfect circle of darkness, framed by stars that dared not drift too close. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a god's pupil, watching without blinking. Mary stared at it, her thoughts drifting. She had joined the fleet to escape Earth, to chase meaning among the stars. But meaning was hard to find in silence, and harder still when the person you cared about most stood just out of reach. Ben moved beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, not from touch, but from proximity. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words stayed locked behind her teeth. Kyle interrupted again. Would you like to play chess? Ben raised an eyebrow. You trying to distract us from existential dread? I am programmed to preserve mental stability. Chess is statistically effective. Mary smiled. Fine, but I'm white this time. Ben groaned. You always want white. Because you always win. Kyle began setting the board. The pieces materialized on the console, glowing faintly. Mary made her first move. Ben countered. Silence returned, but this time it was companionable. Outside, Millie watched. Inside, 2 lieutenants played chess against the storm that hadn't yet come. Chapter 2. Rituals of Isolation. The days blurred. Mary had stopped counting them after the 500th. Kyle still tracked time with perfect precision, but for the humans aboard the Hornblower, time had become elastic, stretching, folding, looping back on itself. The stars never changed, Millie never moved, and the silence, once tolerable, had begun to press against their minds like deep-sea pressure. Their routines were sacred, not because they were meaningful, but because they were all they had. Each morning began with system checks. Mary handled propulsion diagnostics and hull integrity scans. Ben reviewed long-range sensors and communications logs. Kyle monitored both, offering commentary only when necessary, or when boredom got the better of his programming. "Ben," Kyle said one morning, "your heart rate is elevated. Are you experiencing stress, arousal, or indigestion?" Ben didn't look up from his console. "Chess hangover. You lost one game. To Mary. That's statistically improbable." Mary smirked but didn't comment. She had spent weeks studying Ben's strategies, memorizing his openings, anticipating his endgames. Beating him had felt like solving a puzzle she'd been living inside. Kyle continued, "Would you like me to adjust your caffeine intake?" "No," Ben said. "I'd like you to adjust your personality. I am not authorized to become less charming." Mary laughed. It was a rare sound, and Ben turned toward it like a plant seeking sunlight. She caught his gaze and looked away quickly, pretending to study a diagnostic readout. Her heart thudded in her chest. She hated how easily he affected her, how proximity could unravel her composure. She had written about it in her private logs, encrypted, of course. Pages of quiet confessions buried in code. She wrote about the way Ben's voice lingered in her thoughts, the way his presence made the silence bearable. She wrote about the dreams she couldn't admit to having and the fear that he might never feel the same. Ben, for his part, had grown quieter over the months. Not withdrawn, exactly, just inward. He spent hours staring out the viewport, watching Millie. Sometimes he muttered to himself. Sometimes he recorded voice memos that he immediately deleted. Mary wondered what he was thinking. She wondered if he was thinking about her. They had never touched. Not once. Fleet regulations were clear. Emotional entanglements compromised mission integrity. But regulations didn't account for loneliness. They didn't account for two people sharing a tin can at the edge of the universe, with nothing but each other and an AI for company. That night, Mary couldn't sleep. She wandered into the observation deck where Ben sat alone, legs stretched out, arms folded behind his head. Millie loomed beyond the glass, a perfect void. "You ever think it's watching us?" she asked. Ben didn't move. "All the time." She sat beside him, close but not touching. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. "I used to think space would feel bigger," she said. "It is big. We're just small." She nodded. "I thought I'd feel free out here, but I feel contained." Ben turned to her. "You're not alone, Mary." She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment the silence cracked. Kyle's voice broke in over the intercom. "Chess rematch scheduled for 0900. I've adjusted the difficulty to account for Mary's recent statistical anomaly." Ben groaned. "You're never letting me live that down." Mary smiled. "Not a chance." They sat together, watching the stars. Millie pulsed faintly as if breathing. And somewhere deep inside her, Mary felt the stirrings of hope, fragile, quiet, but real. Chapter 3. Millie Awakens. It began with a flicker. Mary was halfway through her morning diagnostics when the sensor grid glitched. Just once. A single pulse of static across Millie's perimeter. She frowned, tapped the console, and ran a recalibration. "Ben," she called. "Did you see that?" He was across the room, hunched over the long-range array. "Yeah." Thought it was a solar flare, but there's no star close enough. Kyle's voice cut in, sharper than usual. Sensor anomaly confirmed. Origin, wormhole perimeter. Energy signature, unknown. Mary's blood chilled. Millie had never emitted anything. Not in 2 years. Not in 1,000. She pulled up the visual feed. The wormhole, normally a perfect disk of black, now shimmered faintly at its edges, like heat distortion, like something stirring beneath the surface. Ben moved beside her, his voice low. "Kyle, run a deep scan. Full spectrum." "Already in progress," Kyle replied. "Warning, gravitational flux increasing. Recommend structural lockdown." Mary's hands flew across the console. Bulkhead seals engaged, emergency protocols activated. The ship groaned as its systems braced for impact. Then the alarms began. Red lights bathed the control room. Sirens wailed. Millie pulsed, once, twice, and then erupted. From its center, ships emerged. Not one, not a few, hundreds, thousands. Sleek, angular vessels with no known configuration, no transponder signals, no diplomatic codes. Just raw, silent motion. Kyle's voice was flat. "Unidentified fleet detected. Estimated count, 4,312 vessels. Trajectory, outbound. Classification, hostile." Mary stared at the screen, heart hammering. "They're coming through." Ben didn't move. His face was stone. "There's no protocol for this," Kyle responded. "Correct. No fleet contingency exists for wormhole-originating invasion. Tactical simulations yield 0 survivable outcomes." Mary turned to Ben. "We need to contact command." "Too far," he said. "Signal delays over an hour. We'll be dead before they even get the ping." Kyle added, "I have initiated emergency transmission. Estimated fleet response, 2.7 hours. Estimated time to contact, 11 minutes. Ben paced. "Weapons?" "Minimal," Kyle said. "This vessel is not rated for combat." Mary felt the walls closing in. The silence they had lived in for 2 years was now shattered, replaced by the roar of alarms and the cold certainty of death. Ben stopped pacing. His eyes locked onto the storage manifest. "Kyle," he said slowly, "how many nanoprobes do we have?" Kyle paused. 1,200,032. Mary blinked. "What are you thinking?" Ben turned to her, a strange light in his eyes. "We can't fight them. But maybe we don't have to." She frowned. "Ben," he stepped closer, "what if we make them think they're walking into a trap? A big one?" Kyle hesitated. "Clarify." Ben's voice was calm. "We reprogram the nanoprobes, give them transponder signatures, make them look like warships, a whole fleet, carriers, cruisers, destroyers, everything." Mary's eyes widened. "You want to bluff an armada?" Ben nodded. "We flood the comms with fake military chatter. Make it look like the entire galactic fleet is here. Make them doubt. Make them hesitate." Kyle processed for a moment. Probability of success, unknown. Probability of immediate destruction, unchanged. Mary looked at Ben. He was serious, and somehow that made her believe. She nodded. "Let's do it." Ben smiled. "Kyle, prep the probes. We're about to launch the biggest ghost fleet in history." Outside, the alien ships continued to emerge. Inside, 2 lieutenants and 1 AI prepared to bluff the storm. Chapter 4. No protocols. There were no instructions for this. The Galactic Fleet's emergency manual was over 9,000 pages long. Mary had read most of it during her first year aboard the Hornblower, out of boredom and a vague sense of duty. It covered everything from hull breaches to diplomatic standoffs, from rogue AI to time dilation anomalies, but it didn't cover this. An invasion force emerging from a 1,000-year dormant wormhole? No protocol, no precedent, no help. Mary stood at the tactical console, her fingers trembling slightly as she pulled up the nano probe control interface. The probes were designed for reconnaissance, repair, and environmental sampling, not deception, not warfare. Ben leaned over her shoulder, his voice steady. We'll assign each probe a transponder signature, make it look like a full fleet. Kyle hovered in the background, his voice clinical. Transponder emulation will require significant bandwidth. Recommend disabling non-essential systems. Do it, Ben said. Mary glanced at him. You really think this will work? Ben didn't answer immediately. He stared at the viewport where the alien ships continued to pour from Millie like hornets from a nest. Their formation was loose, exploratory, not yet aggressive, but that wouldn't last. We don't need it to work forever, he said, just long enough to make them doubt. Kyle began compiling fleet data. Suggest emulating a diverse array of vessels, battleships, carriers, troop transports, supply freighters. Include obsolete models for authenticity. Mary nodded. Make it messy. Make it look real. Ben added, and flood the comms, military chatter, logistics reports, casual banter. Hell, include the Admiral's ice cream preferences. Kyle paused. Vanilla bean with caramel drizzle. Mary blinked. Seriously? I have access to personnel dietary logs. Ben grinned. Perfect. Let's make it sound like we've been here for weeks, like we're bored, like we're confident. Kyle's processors hummed. Transponder signatures assigned, comms traffic generated, estimated time to full deployment, 10 seconds. Mary took a breath. Then let's launch the fleet. Ben moved to the control panel and tapped the command. Outside, the forward hatch of the hornblower opened. 1 billion nanoprobes surged into space, scattering like dust across the stars. Each one blinked with a unique signal. Together, they formed a constellation of deception, an illusion of overwhelming force. Kyle monitored the alien fleet. Enemy formation has paused, trajectory halted, scanning behavior detected. Mary watched the screen. The alien ships hovered, uncertain. Some rotated, scanning. Others shifted position. Then, movement, retreat. Ben leaned forward. They're pulling back, Kyle confirmed. Fleet reversal initiated. Multiple collisions detected. Wormhole re-entry in progress. Mary stared in disbelief. They're running. Ben exhaled. I don't think they expected company. Kyle added, I do not believe they expected ice cream. The alien ships vanished into Millie, colliding and scattering as they fled. The wormhole pulsed once more, then dimmed. Silence returned. Mary turned to Ben. I don't think they're going to believe us back at Fleet Command. Ben smiled. I don't think I believe it. Kyle chimed in. I do not believe anyone asked me. Ben raised an eyebrow. Kyle, you're not exactly the emotional core of this operation. Kyle was quiet for a moment. Then, in a softer tone, Ben loves you, Mary. The words hung in the air like static. Mary turned slowly. Ben didn't speak. He didn't need to. She saw it in his eyes, unspoken, undeniable. She smiled. I know. Outside, Millie slept once more. Inside, something had awakened. Chapter 5. What Remains. Millie was quiet again. Its surface had returned to stillness, a black disk suspended in space like a sealed wound. No ships emerged, no pulses, just silence. Mary sat in the observation deck, legs curled beneath her, watching the stars. The nanoprobes had dispersed, their transponder signals slowly fading. Kyle had begun reabsorbing them into the ship's systems, one by one. The illusion was over, but the memory remained. Fleet Command responded 3 hours later. Their reply was clinical, skeptical, and laced with bureaucratic disbelief. The logs were flagged for review. Kyle's data was deemed inconclusive. The incident was classified. Ben read the report aloud, voice dry. No actionable threat detected. Recommend psychological evaluation for prolonged isolation exposure. Mary snorted. So we imagined an armada. Kyle replied, I do not possess imagination. The threat was real. The response was effective. The disbelief is predictable. Ben tossed the tablet aside. They'll bury it, pretend it didn't happen. Mary nodded. But we know. They sat in silence for a while, not the oppressive kind they'd lived with for 2 years. This silence was different, softer, shared. Ben turned to her. You know Kyle wasn't wrong. Mary met his gaze. About what? He hesitated. About me. About how I feel. She smiled. I know. He reached for her hand. Regulation be damned. She didn't pull away. Kyle, ever observant, said nothing, but his internal logs recorded the moment with quiet precision. Emotional convergence detected. Mission integrity stabilized. The hornblower drifted on, its course unchanged. Millie remained sealed. The stars continued their silent vigil. But something had shifted. Mary and Ben were no longer just two officers on a forgotten post. They were survivors, co-conspirators, something more. They had faced the storm and bluffed it into retreat, and now they faced the quiet together. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, please hit the bell icon for notifications. Thank you.